All right, well, welcome everybody to our second March coffee break. As I said last 2 weeks ago, our goal is to showcase the work that you are doing and provide a platform for you guys to network with each other. Today, last week you talked about where you're at in the planning process for spring and summer and around transition and supporting students' pathways. Today, you're going to hear some feedback from students and get their perspective. We hope that today you're able to problem solve and also ask some really good questions, because we have our full team here today, and we hope that this will help enhance your programming and help you plan for those April workshops that are coming up. So I wanted to let you know, as I said, our whole team is here today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. First, I will just say that, again, I am Beth Kelly. I'm an assistant director, and I deal mainly in professional development coordination and communication, the website, and other content resources, things of that nature. I think I'm going to hand it off to Annie so she can do a quick intro.
Hey everybody, Annie Pocklington here. I lead our 7th year programs as well as our advisory committees, and I'm super excited to chat with you today about our student advisory committee. Kelly, I'll pass it to you.
You're muted.
I thought I unmuted myself. I'm sorry. I had reached over there and clicked the wrong button apparently. Hi all, Kelly Keeney. You know me from receiving compliance reviews and keeping up on your work plan entries and portal entries and all that good stuff. Logistics for conferences and workshops, also a little bit of everything. Nice to see you all. I'll pass that on to Marcy.
Marcy Mills, Gear Up Director. I'll pass it to Dan.
Hey everybody, Dan Ash, Associate Director, working on work plan, site visits, professional development, coaching and consulting. I'll pass it on over to Buffy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Buffy Hatcher, budget analyst, anything fiscal, work plan. I'll pass it to Christina.
Good afternoon, Christina Winstead. I am the Associate Director for College Access Initiatives, and you'll know me from financial aid, all things paying for education after high school. And I will pass it back to Beth.
Yeah,
pass it back to Beth.
It's nice to see our additional member, Christina, on today's webinar. She's going to have some really helpful updates for you. Speaking of the agenda, today, again, this is replacing one of our in-person workshops. So the last webinar and this webinar combined. So because of that, we ask that you try to stay fully present and engaged. And we do have some breakout sessions for you, again, to network, but also get technical assistance from one of the WASAC staff members. So please unmute yourself. Share your video if you feel comfortable doing so, and take an active role in today's webinar. We're going to kick it off first with learning about the Student Advisory Committee with Dan is going to provide some context, and Annie is also going to share some lessons that we are in the process of learning from students. You're going to have a time to talk about that and then hear all things financial aid from our knowledgeable resource, our Einstein Christina, and then Marcy's going to go into talking about transition support and year 7 planning. So again, full couple hours, but we're going to get going. I'm going to hand it off to Dan to talk about the Student Advisory Institute. Is this, Dan, is this your slide?
I'm going to take it from here, actually, Beth.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, I'll pass it off to Dan in just a few minutes.
Yeah, let me know how to help.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm super excited to talk to you about our Gear Up Student Advisory Committee. This month is actually our 1-year anniversary and celebration of the great work that we've been doing with our Student Advisory Committee. I'm super just proud and excited for these students. We have 13 Gear Up student advisors across the state. 3 of those students we added in December as new representation for our team, but 10 of those students have been fully committed and with us for the past year. So we are feeling really excited about the possibility for this work and what it has looked like for us over the past year, just in terms of centering student voice and getting some feedback from students, some engagement from them around how they experience Gear Up services, and then also how they're experiencing their senior year and their journey through the last year of high school. So this is just a reminder slide that we have students from all over the state joining us in this work, and we participate in monthly meetings. We actually just met with them Monday night, a really great, awesome group of students who, after Leavenworth last August when they joined us, have begged to get together in person every month since. So with that, Beth, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. We were able to gather our students for a Student Advisory Institute in January. And really the importance of this work for us was to continue that feedback that we were receiving from students, but also to really commit to authentic, longitudinal relationships. So one thing we know is that the more consistent our relationships are and the longer they span, the deeper those connections we have with students are. And we've really seen that in our work over the past year. So the first few months we gathered, there was some natural hesitancy from our students in sharing and participating. Of course, they were participating, but they weren't totally comfortable or able to go to vulnerable spaces. And we saw a huge shift in that when we gathered up those students and had them participate in person in Leavenworth. So we were really excited to get them together in January and to see that develop even further. And it certainly did. So our goal of the weekend was to connect and build community with these students, but also to spend some time focusing on engaging students in dialogue with each other and with us about how they experience 2 things. One, just the general senior year process, because it's important for us to kind of reflect with students at a really pivotal time in the year about how they've been experiencing their senior year. But then also about scholarships. And the reason that we asked students about scholarships in these focus groups was really because when we ask students what support they need, it's oftentimes scholarships they're looking for, which is interesting from our perspective because we feel like we do a pretty good job providing scholarship resources. However, focus groups are amazing because we learned a ton about maybe where some of our gaps are or how we can do our programming or think about scholarship support a little bit differently. So before I pass it off to Dan to showcase a really cool video, I wanted to just spend some time talking about the insight that we did receive from our Student Advisory Committee over the course of the weekend. So excuse me while I divert my attention over to a brief list of insight from these students. I do just want to say that this is a super brief list because the information we got from them was 10 times what I'm about to share, but I tried to pull out some really important and key points, some of which you may already know and experience frequently in your interactions with students, and some things that may kind of spark your interest or ask you provide an opportunity for you to reflect on some things. So first, we focused on the senior year process and asked our students a variety of questions. One thing that students were very loud and clear about was that they really struggle making cold calls to people they don't know. So a huge barrier to their process is just getting on the phone, it seems. They also had a lot of big feelings about leaving their families behind in the college going process and having this sense of needing to wrap up their childhood. And that created some discomfort and fear and maybe some anxious feelings in our students. They, of course, felt a lot of pressure from a variety of places and spaces about choosing their post-secondary pathway. Our students also engaged in a variety of conversations throughout the weekend about rejection and how they're really struggling to navigate rejection from schools, not only the emotional burden of rejection, but also what now? What are my next steps when I was so set on something I thought was sure to happen? They also mentioned multiple times about avoidance really being a tool for them in navigating big feelings. I'm sure that's not a surprise to most of you. We see our students kind of checking out maybe when they're not feeling like they're able to engage with things that feel challenging for them socially or emotionally. They do, however, feel a really strong sense of pride when they are able to know what options they have, engage and interact with a variety of after high school options. And then just knowing that they're the ones that get to make that choice is a really empowering thing for them. So just a great reminder that students really do feel a sense of pride in knowing that they have agency and that there are multiple things out there for them to pursue. Students are definitely confused and overwhelmed about financial aid aspects or just financial aspects generally, really concerned about, do I need a job? You know, what's the actual cost? What does financial aid mean? What does it cover? And how am I going to pay for all of this if it doesn't cover? They definitely talked about self-doubt, not feeling prepared for leaving small towns or not feeling prepared for big cities that campuses are sometimes in, or not feeling prepared for campuses generally. And they talked a lot about systemic doubt too, just kind of being afraid of being just another number on a campus. Students don't like the feeling of being handed off to someone else. So they talked about if they reach out to a support person or a service on campus, they really appreciate when that person follows or moves with them through the process of finding the information rather than just feeling like they're being handed off. And then they also talked about one of their big fears of college being that they want to continue to have someone push them. So they're afraid that they've gotten that kind of push, the nudge support in high school, and that's going to go away. And they're fearful about what that might mean for them getting things done. In regards to scholarships, we were excited to hear that all of our students, or the majority of our students, I think one of them hadn't yet, but the majority of our students had completed at least one scholarship application. However, most of them hadn't completed more than one. They definitely had a little bit of misunderstanding around what scholarships were. So students really emphasized in our conversation that scholarships didn't have to be paid back, which, as we all know, that's not necessarily true. So just a reminder to talk about the fact that scholarships are unique and they're offered by independent organizations. And so usually every process or every portion of the scholarship process is going to be a little bit unique, scholarship to scholarship. They also had a real worry about just not qualifying. And so just again, another reminder for us to let students know that there are scholarships out there for everything. There are scholarships for that are academically associated, merit-based, hobby-based, income-based. There's a scholarship out there for everybody. So just a continual reminder of that. Students also emphasized having trouble finding scholarships, especially ones that don't feel overwhelming. So most times students were feeling like they were kind of submitting a scholarship out into the abyss and having a sense of, I think I'm just submitting this with 10,000 other students, and just not feeling like it was meaningful or worth their time, which I think is a reminder for us that really local and regional scholarships are probably the best support we can provide to students, just continually reminding them that there are things in our community that can help them with college costs. Of course, they talked about just the burden of a lot of pre-work or information needing family support, or just needing really detailed information they didn't always feel they had the capacity to provide. And of course, that students are feeling really overwhelmed by the writing portions, either because the scholarships are requiring a lot of writing or because our students don't feel like they're strong writers. And so right out of the gate, they're already feeling really insecure in the process. They also talked about scholarships really being the last priority on their list when it came to the college going process, which was a new concept for me that really made a lot of sense. So students were just saying, you know, I have all of these other things I have to do before I can go and start school next fall. And scholarships aren't one of those have to do activities. So they oftentimes fall to the bottom of the list. And they actually recognize that by saying, you know, I think staff in my school are also helping other people do more important have to do tasks, and maybe recognizing feeling a little bit bad reaching out for help or folks not having the time to support them in scholarship work. This generation of students, I don't know if folks are seeing this yet, but this is the second time we've now kind of come across this in focus groups. They have a strong desire to avoid scams and a really big sense of distrust with websites and different online sources. So something to just kind of be aware of. And then lastly, a really interesting emotional kind of burden for students is that they feel really bad applying for scholarships because they think other students might need scholarships more than they do, and feeling like they're taking money from someone who may need it more than they do. So just a really interesting perspective from students, just around kind of some emotional hesitation with applying. So that is just some of the student advisory feedback that we got. We're going to engage in a group or in some breakout sessions soon and kind of talk through what this means for us and our work. But before we get to that, I'm going to pass it off to Dan to give you some visual insight into what we were up to this weekend.
Super. Thanks so much there, Annie. And before you launch that, Beth, just a few words. You know, one of the things that we're charged with here in Olympia is to be able to tell and share out our Gear Up stories, right? So my approach to that is, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then how many would a video be worth? So while we were operating that weekend, I was trying to be cognizant of shooting some decent video that captured the experience that the students you know, had out there at Camp Arnold. So Beth is going to fire this up. This will ultimately be on our YouTube channel as soon as Beth can get it posted up, hopefully pretty soon. All right, let her rip there, Beth.
Bear with me just 1 second, everyone.
Full screen, Beth.
After a year of online meetings, the Student Advisory Committee gathered for a 3-day workshop. Gear Up facilitators created a safe environment where students could talk about life after high school, focused on their needs, and explored how Gear Up services could improve in the future. The traditional high school schedule is packed with activities, and that limited when we could bring the advisory committee together. We needed time and space for in-depth reflection and group work. Without honest feedback from students, we lose valuable information around affordability, enrollment, student services, and barriers to completion. So what's the point of this committee's work?
The intent of the Gear Up Student Advisory Committee is to center student voice. We found the power of centering student voice is twofold. First, students feel heard and respected. And second, as Gear Up practitioners, we can reflect on our services and modify them based on student needs.
Throughout the Institute weekend, deliberate time was set aside to build trust. Each person gave input when establishing our norms. Once the facilitators framed the process, the students provided crucial insights and viewpoints on their Gear Up experiences. After all, it was their future in focus.
To be sure a mutual benefit really occurred, we had to lean on those authentic relationships we were building. We wanted to continue to have conversation with students and structure activities in a really meaningful way. We also wanted to provide opportunities for focus groups and make sure that we were allowing students to really play with a purpose.
By amplifying student voices, Washington State Gear Up is positioned to continue supporting students now and in the future. When we create meaningful educational experiences for students, they can engage in practicing equity, exploring pathways, and discovering their purpose.
Thanks for making that happen, Beth. We appreciate that. We'll get that posted up on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch it. It'll be a little more smooth as far as glitchy once it's posted up.
All right, can everyone see the PowerPoint again as a full presentation? Okay, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I will definitely get that posted. And I will also post the recording of this on our YouTube page as well. And when I email out the PDF of the presentation and follow-up materials, I'll include those links.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth.
Mhm.
So we're going to spend some time in breakout sessions here. Beth, if you don't mind, I don't know if you have the capacity, but actually I do. I pulled this up. I'm going to copy and paste these questions into the chat, and we are going to break out into groups. We are going to send one of our Washington State Gear Up staff members into the groups to make sure we're taking notes and get some valuable feedback. So we will go ahead and open up those groups now, and I will put those questions in the chat. Did you open those breakout rooms, Beth?
No, that's not my mouse. I thought her mouse was my mouse. Huh?
Beth, do you need me to create breakout groups?
I'm not seeing.
I got it.
Seems like, okay, it seemed like my option disappeared for some reason. Sorry. Thank you,
No
Annie.
worries. Yep,
Teamwork makes the dream work.
that's right. All right. Go ahead, Beth. Thanks. We're just going to take a few minutes here and kind of, give a short debrief of what we were hearing or talking about in our group. So if someone from each group wants to share out, that would be awesome. I'll let you take the mic when you're ready.
I'm going to hop in and get started just while things are relatively fresh on my mind. So a couple of things that stood out in our breakout. One was Jerry was talking about how he just feels like we need to be way more deliberate around the scholarship piece with these students, because so many students are caught up right now and really finishing senior boards, right? High school and beyond plans, getting that stuff down, and scholarships not even on the radar. Even though folks are talking about it, it's just not a priority. The other thing that I heard from two members of our group is they said that they were going to make a change and really kind of push into the junior class a lot more, because they're just realizing that the seniors feel like a tsunami's hitting them. There's just too much to do with everything else, and to really ramp up even more deliberately in the junior year around scholarships would be helpful. There was a couple of comments made as well that some particular segments of the population already get some benefit from maybe a local tribe or some veterans associations. So they're like, yeah, I don't even need to do the scholarship, but still asking folks like, don't forget, you can get a Pell Grant that can pay for a bunch of other things outside of just tuition and so forth. So good input from our group. And if anyone else that was in our breakout wants to hop in, go ahead and unmute and share out.
I'll go next. So I felt like everyone in our group had a pretty good structure in place for sharing out scholarships, various ways that's being done, some in a Google Classroom, some through a career center. One school has a nonprofit that works in the school that helps with those. So it really just kind of was all over, but everyone has at least a strategy. I think where it varied was then also who's kind of helping review essays, and some people are engaging English teachers support in that. Some have it as a structured class. So my favorite model, I'll just brag on Pateros. They have a college prep class that all seniors take, that all Gear Up activities occur in that class. I think that's a beautiful model. So they get a lot of support in there from a classroom teacher. But there does seem to be some good strategies in place. And then a lot of people talked about the local scholarships that they have, and there's a single application for those local scholarships, which makes a really good process for students. And then someone shared that probably next year they'd focus on the Common App application questions, because that's becoming more common to be used. And so maybe having some structured practice and preparation for the Common App questions. And then Rosalie pointed out, like what Dan's always telling us, the repeat to remember, that students, even though we've told them a million times the same thing, maybe it wasn't relevant then, maybe they didn't remember, or now it's becoming more important, so they're trying to pay attention maybe a little more now. And so how it's just really important to keep telling students the same things we've been telling them all along, and continuing that work, and not getting frustrated by that. Just know that that's where they are in the process and supporting them. That's what I have.
Kelly, you're muted.
I unmuted myself. I swear to goodness, I unmuted myself. Okay. So now I completely lost my train of thought. In our group, we talked a lot about the social emotional part, that people are really, that it seems to be like what is most effective. I agree with Marcy. It seemed like everybody had really good plans on how they're getting that information out there, just in various different ways. Bellingham had shared that they do a lot of scholarship outreach, they had 107 students apply for the applications, but only 47 of those 107 students actually completed and submitted the applications. So they're finding that it seems like what is happening is that not so much in group settings, but more in one-on-one support is what is seeming to help the most. And I just heard some expression of that it's very time consuming because students are just needing so much help that they're having a lot of issues with just just advocating for themselves and really leaning on the support that's in place. And a lot of that's taking place through one-on-one with Gear Up staff members. Students are overwhelmed. I think that the adults, from what I'm gathering from our conversation, the adults are also overwhelmed. And a couple of the things that I heard that were really interesting about is that what I heard more than one person say is as far as applying for scholarships, that a lot of these students are waiting until after they've been accepted and then leaning on those letters to determine why that, that they're realizing that they need to come up with a chunk of money to enable to make this happen. And so again, back to waiting for the last minute to kind of get this stuff, which is also a burden on everyone. So, and the overall sense of just trying to get people engaged and responding to what's out there, the outreach that's taking place. So yeah. Does anybody want to add to that? Because that was in my group. Dave, do you have anything to add to that? Morton?
Can you guys hear me? No, I think, we talked about how kids want to do scholarships and getting them to do them is more of a one-on-one thing. Just an example is we had an event where we had some Spokane Home Builders Association, like Gold Seal Plumbing owner, a couple different business owners, and we did postcard announcements, emails, posters, advisory, morning announcements. We did like everything you could to like promote it, and had 2 kids sign up. So we asked the construction people to come back 3 weeks later and did a lot more one-on-one outreach, and we had 31 kids sign up. So that was for like those types of things. So then when we try to put that into scholarship-based stuff, it's a lot of one-on-one outreach, like finding what kids want to do what major and try to reach out to them. And so we try to do as much as we can. Just sometimes, like the one with the STEM program that we had the email about, we talked about, was when you have a scholarship that's based just on a major, you have to locate which kids want to do that major and then do that outreach and then hope that some of them follow through. So it just gets a lot of one-on-one or support rather than them reading their emails and looking at posters and their parents looking at the postcards, etc. So I think that was basically kind of what I was saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, David.
I can go. My group, we discussed similar topics. A couple of things that we talked about were around misconceptions and expectations, or the amount of work, or other misconceptions tied to scholarships. We did also talk about whether or not we felt like the feedback we heard from the student advisory group was representative of this populations that the people in the room, that the kiddos that they serve, and they felt like that was accurate. We did talk about the fact that scholarships seem sort of like the thing that you can put off, like when you're worried about like survival and being a teenager and all the things that you have to do. Like that was kind of an easier thing to put off. And then it sounds like a lot of folks in my room were also already starting to look at award letters and acceptance letters and rejection letters, and help students really navigate those next steps. Feel free to chime in if anyone else wants to capture any talking points.
Can I add one thing? I was in your group, but can I add one more thing I forgot to say too was another thing we talked about was while we're trying to get a lot of scholarships done and we call the students in, we only have 40% of our students with their FAFSAs completed right now. So we're still doing a big push on FAFSA on top of the scholarship. So while we have the 40% of kids that we can do the scholarship talk, before we have the scholarship talk, we want those kids to do their FAFSA maybe at the same time. But yeah, that was another thing that we had. Sorry.
Thanks for that addition, David. I think that's important. All right, folks. Well, thanks for participating in the breakout groups. And if any other thoughts or ideas come up, please feel free to share out. Again, I want to remind folks that this conversation came up at the student advisory level, just because we do feel like when students reach out to us via the text campaign or in other ways, that they really are asking a lot about scholarships. So we're just trying to understand, like, what's the gap in the services that we're providing? Because again, on our end, we know the work you're doing, we know the resources we have online, and we're just kind of wondering, like, what are students missing in that process that we could potentially do better at? So thanks again for gathering around this conversation. And Beth, I will pass it back to you.
All right, you should be able to see the PowerPoint now. Okay, thank you. All right. All right, we are going to switch gears a little bit, though it's all related. And here we have my fabulous coworker, Christina Winstead, is joining us to talk about FSAID and FAFSA changes. Christina, are you there?
I am here. I'm excited to talk about my favorite topic, financial aid.
Yay.
So hopefully y'all can hear me. But financial aid changes are coming, and I think a lot of you know about this for fall 2023. And so there's going to be some changes to the application, but FSAIDs are a big component of it. And so what has happened is what they're calling the FAFSA Simplification Act. It was passed in December of 2020. And really what they're doing is they're redesigning the 24-25 FAFSA. It's going to have less questions, but it's going to change it's going to change some of the terms that we use. Like, we won't be using EFC anymore. We'll be using SAI. And there's a whole list in the bulletin, in the GEAR Up bulletin. There's a list of the top 10 changes that come from NCAN that are the top 10 changes in this new application. But the component I really want to focus on today is the FSAID. So with the new FAFSA, the FSAID has already experienced some changes. There's multi-factor authentication, which means students have to verify their phone, of course, or their email address, but now they also get a code, a backup code that they're going to have to save as well. And that is a piece that's going to be helpful for them if they maybe change their phone and their email address and can't get in any other way. That code will still get them into their application. Everybody starting fall of 2023, anybody contributing to a financial aid application to a FAFSA, parents or students, or they're all going to have to provide information through their FSAID. So the FSAID is required for every single person, even those without social security numbers. Right now, they are in the process of determining how they're going to verify the identity of those without social security numbers so that they can apply for an FSAID. And we won't see that process probably till August. But everybody's going to have to make one. So, and not only does everybody have to make one, they have to have a verified FSAID before they can start their application. So the verified FSAID can take 1 to 3 days, depending on how busy it is. And that means we can't have all one and done financial aid application sessions. You can't bring students in, have them apply for an FSAID, and then have them directly apply for financial aid. They're going to have to do this part earlier. Now, we have lots of resources, as always. I have plenty of resources for you as you're thinking, oh, we got to do all of this separately. Really what we want to look at is maybe making the FSAID, this is best practice that NCAN has talked about, making it a junior year task. And so creating the FSAID is something that you can do junior year. Next slide, please. Okay, so resources. We have an updated FSAID worksheet that your students can use that it also includes their backup code as well as the other components of the FSAID. It says FSAID on one side. On the back side, it lets people know that if they're not eligible for the FAFSA, that they want to do the WAFSA, and here's how to create a WAFSA account. So both sides is a one pager, but one side's FAFSA, one side's WAFSA, and they only have to create an FSAID or WAFSA account once. So they get one and done. You don't have to do it every single year, but for our juniors who are going to be rising seniors, this is going to be one of those challenges. The other challenge is that the application is going to be delayed. And so I see this as an opportunity for us to all learn more about the changes to the financial aid application before supporting our students. So if you are working with graduated seniors next year who are in their first year of college, first they're going to say, I just did that financial aid application. You're like, it's been a year. It's been a little while. It's time to renew your application. And the application is going to look different for them. So for those students, they might need more support going through the application. The application will be shorter, but the terminology in the application may have changed. And of course, for our juniors who are rising seniors, they've never seen the application, most of them. And so for them, this is just going to be a financial aid application. We're going to start supporting juniors, the class of 2024, with a financial aid night. So we are going to have a class of 2024 virtual financial aid night to help students learn more about financial aid, to help them apply. In addition, we will have a presentation, and then we'll move into breakout rooms where students can create their FSAID or their WAFSA account. And we'll have a second breakout room for parents or students who don't have an email address, or students who want to make an email address that they're going to check on a regular basis that won't make an admissions officer blush. And we'll we'll help them through navigating how to create an email address, because the parents will have to have their own individual email address for this process, whether they're doing the FAFSA or the WAFSA. So I think I just wanted to make sure you knew that there are changes coming. We're going to have lots of trainings. As soon as we know more about the application and the changes to the application and what the platform looks like, we are going to have trainings for you. We will have student information nights as well that you can refer your students to, but you can refer anybody who's going to be applying for financial aid next year to this to be able to get help completing their FSAID. The worksheets are great. We all know keeping these worksheets can be a challenge. I am finding if you put them in a file folder already for the student says confidential, then, and this is more of, I see your question there, this is a student-based event, but if you want to come and attend and see how we're running that event so that you can duplicate it, I am happy to give you my slide deck and all the resources that we have if you want to have your own virtual or in-person FSA WAFSA account creation night. I'm happy to share anything that I have that might help you navigate this. But if you can provide, like I noticed that I think in Spokane, y'all provided file folders with this information in there that they could just put with their taxes. Chef's kiss, genius. People kept them. And so I think providing a place where they can put it with their other important records really helps them see the importance of this as opposed to it getting crumpled into the bottom of a book bag. I have a lot of students who will fill this out and then they will just take a photo of it and then they get rid of it. But we just want them to keep this information so they can get into their application. The one pager has the FSAID QR code on one side so that they can just scan it with their phone and start creating their application or their FSAID. On the back side, it has the WAFSA QR code so they can get right in. And it just got finalized. Like you're the first people to get the finalized with the new updates on it. So it'll go up there soon. I just wanted to give you first dibs on it with the new changes.
Yeah, we'll be sharing out this information and, we're creating new workbooks so you don't toss the ones you have now yet, but, we'll be replacing old outdated information as we can, right?
Yeah, 12th year is going to send you a one-pager email or paper that has graphics of all the documents, of all the resources that you can now, I'm not saying throw away because Captain Planet, I don't want them to knock on your door, but then you can recycle all the old stuff that we have. We want to make sure that you have timely, relevant information that's actionable by students that has information on the 24-25 FAFSA and WAFSA. And the changes to the FAFSA means also changes to the WAFSA as well. And so the thing we do know is that it will not be released on October 1st next year. The application will open up at some point during December, which means we have extra time to learn more about the application and support our students in creating their FSA IDs and WAFSA accounts. Any questions? I know that's a lot from someone who talks fast and loves financial aid.
Yeah, thanks, Christina, for sharing that updated information. It is going to be a lot for us to process and then disseminate next year. But as Beth and Christina shared, we will be doing that. So one of the reasons I wanted Christina to share today specifically is that in our cohort schools where we are starting to think about the seniors that we will be serving next year. And so you might think about doing FSA ID with juniors this year, but also knowing that it won't open until December, it really does give us September, October, November to also do FSA ID. So we'll make sure that's part of your work plans, but just wanted to give you that heads up because it is a different process and will need to be done differently than we've done it in the past. So thank you, Christina, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I know that someone asked me earlier, but it's a one-time delay. It's only this 1 year that the rest of October, pumpkin spice and everything nice and financial aid, all the rest of the years. But for this year, it's probably going to be more of a like, are you eating gingerbread? It's time for financial aid.
Thanks, Christina. I think you have to go. So if anybody has any other questions, ask them now, or I can direct them to her later.
Sounds perfect. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk more about financial aid. Oh, I see a hand. Did a hand go up or maybe not? Okay. If anyone has questions, let me know. I am so happy to help navigate you through this. We've all got it together. And if you have questions, just email me and I'm happy to help you.
Thank you. All right. All right, now we are going to continue on everything financial aid transition, spring, summer kind of timeline topics, and I'm going to hand it off to Marcy. Marcy, just let me know how I can move the slides around for you, or you can take it if you want.
Thanks, Beth.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I think, you know, the repeat to remember is a big theme today. So some of what I'll be sharing next, you know, we definitely have talked about before, and it's new for so many of us that I continue to get a lot of questions. And so I really appreciate all of you who have been reaching out to say, hey, I need some clarification on this. And so I hope that I will answer the most recent questions in this next part of the presentation, but also know that when Beth sends out the webinar materials, there will be a one-pager with all of the guidance that I'm about to share. So you'll have that as reference also. So just to review, the majority of our students, our class of 2023, will be graduating. This is kind of the culminating project of this grant cycle. And while priority schools have had lots of practice supporting seniors transitioning every year, it is brand new for our cohort schools and a brand new model for us. So we want to be sure that everything we've been working toward for the last 6 years, that we continue with this emphasis and push to support our seniors as they go on to whatever post-secondary pathway that they've chosen. And so here at WASAC, primarily through the work that Annie's been doing, we will continue to support our students through the text campaign. And so students continue to get regular messages from us about what might be coming up for them, some reminders about deadlines, checking in with them to make sure that they have the plan and the support that they need in order to transition. So all of that support will continue. And we're still getting students signing up for that. We'll continue to give opportunities for them to sign up through our surveys that we'll be doing next month. And so it's not too late if a student wants to sign up, and we will continue sending them really helpful messages. And then we will be doing actually both a junior survey and a senior exit survey next month, and we'll give that information to you at the April workshops. So we'll have that all ready to go with the survey window information and some guidance about how we think that should happen. So then we will actually be able to give you those senior exit survey results in early June so that you can see what students said they were going to do, and it will also include information about what support they still need so that we can really target our continued outreach over the summer months to helping those students that have identified needs and requested that support. Then Annie will continue to support students by request. That primarily happens through the text campaign. And then we are hosting multiple welcome events at community college campuses. And so we are in the process of adding those to your work plans. And so Kelly will be updating your work plans to include our Welcome Day events and send out your updated work plans as soon as that's complete. Thank you, Annie. I thought that I put that in this slide, but I can see I put it on my handout instead. So that one-on-one support will be provided not just by Annie, but also by the peer mentors that she's hired to work on our partner campuses, the regional coordinators attached to those campuses, and by all of you who will be continuing to do this work over the next year. Next slide. All right, so as I said, we really want to be sure that this culminating project is successful, and we talk all the time about stopping summer melt, and so that's what we're really looking forward to over this next few months, really getting to support our students as they make that plan and being there to catch them if they stumble at all during this time, and we can help them get to that front door when school starts in the fall. One of the things we'll be talking about at our April workshop as well is your summer work calendar. So stay tuned for more information about that. And then I think primarily most of the questions have been around fiscal implications. And so in the handout that will come out from Beth, I addressed some of that, but here's kind of the short version. We want to make sure that students are fully supported in attending orientation and transition events and those welcome days I mentioned. And so that might mean Gear Up coordinators or other staff transporting them and going with them to those events. It might mean giving families gas cards to get to orientation events. It could mean a lot of different things. And so right now, it looks like most of you are underspending your budget at least a little bit. And so you may have funds available to support that. Most of you have money already in your budget for it. So given that the next budget revision is due March 31st, this is the perfect time to really give your budget a good go through to see what you have available and if you need to move additional funds to support these activities. Then surprise, if you feel like, nope, I'm going to spend all my money and I think I actually need some more money to support these transition activities, then you have this opportunity to ask me for some additional funds by March 31st. So again, that is detailed in this handout. You'll have to follow that deadline. I can't go beyond that deadline, but we do have some amount of money that we could support additional activities. Again, transition specific, college campus specific activities. So not just an open ask for money, but for that activity specifically. So make sure you review this handout carefully so you don't miss out on an opportunity that you might need to help support students.
Hey, Marcy, just to repeat to remember everybody, that deadline is March 31st. Okay, if you just were eating a piece of tuna fish or something right now, remember that. You can't go past that. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. And the instructions about the information that I need for that request is, again, in this handout. Super helpful handout. I've revised it about 18 times today to make sure it's complete. So I think it'll have everything that you need. Stephanie wants to know, if our district doesn't allow gas cards, can we use mileage reimbursement process for our district? So that is addressed in the handout. The answer is yes, you must follow whatever your district requires you to do. I've learned that some districts actually have a reduced rate of mileage reimbursement that they might offer to families. So if that's the case, that's the rate that should be followed. As you know, mileage reimbursement costs us more than a gas card because it's meant to fully reimburse the cost of travel and not just the cost of gas. So it does make it more expensive. But if that's what your district requires you to do, then absolutely you must do that. So we understand that that will vary, but we want to conserve the resources wherever we can. And usually that's through use of a gas card. Any other questions about the expectations around transition, budget revisions, money? David says, we have a student that needs to go to orientation and has been admitted to University of Washington. Are we able to help with both or one thing per student?
Sorry, that came across confusing. She has admitted student day at UW and they have an orientation at their different times.
Yeah, I'm not going to put a limit on how many times we can help a student get to required events. If it's required, it's required. We want to make sure they can do that. I think that where the limit might come in is to make sure that you are equitably distributing funds to students that need them. And so it's more important that you all have a process for deciding who's going to get money and how that's going to be done. And so just keep that in mind. So one student that needs to go to two things possibly should not bump out another student who's not going to get to go at all. So just think about how you're going to prioritize, how you're going to promote that the money is available to help students, the process that you're going to use for selecting them in the event that you don't have enough money to support everyone. And Annie says she doesn't think admitted student day is actually required. Still would be great for them to go, but that might help you in your decision making. Another question that has come up recently is related to the admissions deposits that students are asked to make, primarily to our four-year institutions. And so I want to remind folks that most of the time, students can request to defer those payments until their financial aid comes through in the fall. So they may need your help in advocating for that. One of you shared a bill that came from, I think it was Western Washington University this week, that said the $300 deposit was due, and that helps pay for orientation and advising and such. We typically do not make those payments on behalf of students because they're really a tuition deposit, so not allowable. But right on the invoice, it actually said if the student needs to defer that until the fall when their financial aid came in, then to just let that office know. And so perfect solution. They'll be able to pay that when financial aid comes through, and they'll be able to continue with their admissions process.
And Marcy,
Hi.
can you
Oh,
you
go.
replied to one of my questions earlier this week when I asked about some of these events are happening here in the springtime. So maybe as a group, could you share with us what would be the timeline of when we can help with those events? I had some students who had to travel last week out of state. Can we still help with those, or what would be the guidance on that?
Yeah, so admitted student days, orientations, like they are all starting now. And so we want to definitely support all of those going forward. So we're not putting it, even Stop Summer Melt begins now. So it's completely fine to support those events. And then just to clarify, Washington State says that Oregon, Idaho, and of course, Washington are all considered in-state travel. So those are the states that we can support. If you have students attending college in any other state, or, you know, wanting to attend an orientation or anything, we cannot pay for the travel for those students. So Washington, Oregon, Idaho, completely okay. Anywhere else, unfortunately, the student's going to be on their own to figure that out.
I have another question. I have a student who he just got here like the beginning of the year, I think, from Vietnam, and is like none of his family speaks English. And he's going to Eastern, and so like I'm going to take him, but then they have a barbecue that is like an extra $9. The orientation or midday doesn't cost money, but my question is for that barbecue to help him like be acclimated and feel comfortable, like is that something that I can pay for both of us so that we can stay and like do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm fine
Okay.
with that. It's part of the event. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Brandy says, my work plan says students who are financially eligible. Do you have a certain form we should use for this? No, that's really your professional judgment to determine who should be getting those funds. So I do always say with cohort schools that we should prioritize our free and reduced lunch students or students that we know cannot financially afford them. Like they should absolutely get priority. But we don't have to limit our support to only FERPL students. You can support anyone in the cohort and try to balance that with, you know, who needs the help, who has a justified need. So, you know, for the millionaire's child, like, no, we're probably not going to support that student going to orientation. We think the family can handle that. But that's where your professional judgment really comes in, and we trust your judgment. And you just need to know that you have a process that you're following. Dan?
Yeah, I'm curious about that process. Does that need to be documented, or are we just kind of saying you all do it? You know, I'm just thinking about audits and covering ourselves.
Yeah, it's not an audit point. It's more of just a professionalism. So I also have recommended, like, I don't think one person should decide that, especially in a small district where things can get kind of political. So if you have, you know, with your administrator or with your counselor, you know, kind of have a conversation about, here are the students that have requested support, how much can we afford to give them? And now how do we prioritize how we're distributing that support? I think that's sufficient. We're not going to ask for that to be documented. We trust that folks will be able to manage that with integrity and fidelity. All right, questions are coming in. I'll just keep at it. Do you know if they can defer deposits and fees for housing and dorms too? Can Gear Up help with that? So again, no, we would not be able to pay any of those deposits. So when it comes to the costs of attendance, which those would be considered, we cannot pay for those. So again, that means that student advocating for postponing those payments until financial aid comes through if they cannot afford it. So most of the time, we think people are successful in doing that, but I think Annie said earlier, they don't like to make phone calls. And so they might need some coaching and support in how to make that call, the questions to ask, or the email to send. So I think they definitely need some coaching about how to do that and making sure that happens, because we hear that one of the biggest barriers sometimes is the housing deposit coming due over the summer, and students don't know how to pay it and they don't have access to people to help them during the summer. So that's why we're here. Do we happen to know where I can find a translator that speaks Dinka? I have a student who can't complete her FAFSA because they won't communicate with her, so she can translate the information to her mom, and our district is taking forever to help. I have no idea. Aaliyah, will you send that question to Christina Winstead, please? I put her email in the chat earlier.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
I would rely on her expertise there for translation.
And just in case, Aaliyah, we have a really great ELL teacher here. He might have a resource too. So if you send it to me, maybe I could forward it on to him and just see, because we're an international school. So
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, they won't even let her translate the information to her mom. So it's just been really hard, you know, and she's like, I'm trying, but yeah. Thank you.
Who won't let her translate information to her mom?
FAFSA, like she can't figure out her FSA ID. And so they're like, well, we need to talk with your mom so that we can, you know, verify. And she's like, well, my mom, you can't talk with her because she can't communicate back to you. So it's been a whole thing.
Well, I have a strategy I'll tell you offline.
Okay, love it.
I'm not going to say it in front of you people though.
Thank you.
All right, what are allowable expenses as we take students to orientations, new students moving in? So absolutely transportation would be allowable. If there is a cost associated with the event, that would be allowable. I don't think that's typically the case, but if it is, like the $9 barbecue, then absolutely it would be okay. If doing that travel would require a meal period that's not covered by the event, that could also be allowable. Those are the things that I can think of, but if you're thinking of anything different from that, then just pop me an email and we'll figure out if it's a eligible expense or not. What is not allowable? So I see plane trip, hotel, Uber, etc. So we would pay for flights if that's the best way for a student to go. The flight shouldn't exceed the cost of mileage. So that's a general rule in Gear Up Travel, that we will pay for flights up to the cost of allowable mileage. So you'd need to just do the math and have the backup documentation to show that the flight is cheaper than the mileage, or that we were only going to contribute to the flight for that. I'm not sure how schools feel about booking flights for students, so you'd have to figure that out on your own and let us know. Hotel would be allowable if it's required for them to be able to attend that event, which might happen if you're going across the state. And then Uber from the plane to the hotel would probably be reasonable, some transportation on the ground. So I would say if you're looking at, I mean, that's going to be a very expensive endeavor for a single student. So I would encourage you to kind of put together that budget and maybe just run it by us first, just to be sure it all looks reasonable.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I see some suggestions about language line that might be helpful, Aaliyah. Annie's saying some four-year orientations are about $200. So if that's the case and it's a completely separate bill and not eligible for financial aid waiver, we might consider paying for that, but we'd want to really have that clearly documented. And then Annie's asking if students need to be chaperoned to these events post-graduation, or can they go on their own to save costs? Absolutely, they can go on their own. So that, yeah, we're not requiring that you attend with them. Some of you may choose to do that for various reasons, but students can absolutely go on their own. Hopefully with a family member, if that's at all possible. That would be my recommendation. Especially if there's a family component to that orientation. All right. It looks like the questions have slowed down. So watch for the handout. You know where to find me if you have additional questions. We want to do everything we can to support our students through this next few months. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all the effort and time you're giving them. I think next slide, I think, is ready, Beth. So we were going to do a short breakout. Beth, do we still have time to do breakout?
Let me just double check. I think I'm just double checking our agenda. Well, I believe we could, if you would like, because the last part of this is really about year 7 planning. So your slides on year 7 planning.
Okay.
So I think it's up to you. On that.
I guess I'd like to pull the room if we can. So we have some discussion questions about planning for the next few months. Would a breakout be helpful to you at this point? Can we just maybe raise your hand? Except I can't see everyone. Can you see everyone, Beth?
I think my preference would be that we discuss them as a group, just because
Okay,
I always like to hear the perspectives of everyone else who's not in the group, and then we could have your guidance too if something comes up.
Yeah, because even that going through the questions was helpful to hear what, is coming up.
okay. Well, let's just stay in the large room and let's spend maybe 10 minutes just going through these questions. Now I can see you all. All right, so we kind of talked about what do you need to know. I think we addressed a lot of those questions here. So thinking about the welcome days specifically, those will be in June. Let me see if I can rattle these off. Spokane Falls Community College, Spokane Community College, Wenatchee Valley College, Grace Harbor College. I'm traveling around the state, Clark College.
Highline.
We just decided today we're not going to do one at Highline. So I think those 5.
And that's only because, Stephanie, you guys have such high attendance at the spring event. So we're hoping that
for the April Expo thing?
yeah, we're thinking the April Expo will probably be just as good, if not a better than event we could put on because it's done by the institution itself.
Okay. The only thing that I was thinking about is with Highline, because it's like 5 minutes from our school, we tend to get a lot of students in May or June that decide suddenly that, oh, now they want to go to Highline. So sometimes we get this huge influx of students that are doing that application and deciding to go there instead of going anywhere else. So we may see an increase. Do you want?
Let's you and I talk about how we could meet that need maybe as an individual school then.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And David's asking, what about EWU? So we're only doing these, the welcome days that we're organizing and hosting at those 5 campuses because they don't have an in-person orientation of their own. So we're trying to fill a gap at a community college level. The 4 years that we're partnering with all have other orientation or admitted student days, I think. Annie?
Yeah, and I just want to add that soon our regional coordinators that are associated with our 4-year institutions, so Eastern, Central, and WSU Vancouver, they will have selected specific orientation event days that they're going to be there. And so we'll market those days to students in a different way so they are able to connect with someone Gear Up oriented on campus, meet their peer mentor, et cetera, et cetera. But again, as Marcy was saying, there's just not the same need on those 4-year institution campuses.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Annie. And so as I shared earlier, Kelly's in the process of putting the welcome days in your work plan. So you might remember we all had in the work plan like a TBD, WASAC provided summer transition activity. So that line item's being replaced with these welcome days. We're going to put all of them in there now. I don't necessarily expect Aberdeen to take kids to Spokane Falls welcome days, but everybody's getting the same entry in their work plan just for efficiency's sake, honestly. And so we want to know that you're going to help support students getting there. Now they're local in most cases, right? Federal Way kids are going to go to Highline. Spokane kids are going to go to Spokane. So hopefully the costs are minimal and students might not even need that support. Maybe it's a bus pass. I don't know. You all know what your students will need, but we want you to start planning for that now, now that we have those all scheduled. So any questions specific to those welcome days? We're really excited to be able to provide them. Certainly have never done anything like it before. And the partner campuses are really excited to have us do that as well. All right. I think one of the questions that I've had is, your students are going to graduate before all this transition support over the summer happens. And does your district have rules about transporting or spending money on students once they've graduated? And I don't necessarily need you to answer that in this room, but if you don't know the answer to that, I would recommend that you start asking that question. And if the answer is like, nope, we can't do anything for them because they've graduated, then we need to have a conversation. And sometimes what we've been able to do is say, but Gear Up requires it and we're paying for it. So we need to make sure you're able to do that. So does anyone have concerns specific to that?
I hadn't even thought about it, Marcy. So you've asked a question that it hadn't even occurred to me. So I'll have to find out on my end.
Okay.
Sometimes it's easier to claim ignorance and not ask the question, but then if you won't reimburse us back so that causes another issue.
Yeah.
But Gear Up would reimburse the school for it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm sure there won't be a problem then.
We ran into this for the 2017 cohort because we took that student to nationals in July after she had already graduated. And pretty much like we just explained to them, and I included our grants manager for the district in on it, and it wasn't really an issue. I mean, granted, we've had Gear Up for a really long time, so they're kind of used to it, but she said, hey, it's grant funds, they're reimbursing, and they said okay.
Yeah. And your district signed a contract that you would provide these services over the summer. So that gives you a little support too from that perspective. So it shouldn't be a surprise to them, but they might not have thought of it. And then just thinking about Wi-Fi and phone access over the summer, how will students reach you? What will your availability be? How will you let students know how to reach you? Will it be only email? Do you have cell phone numbers? So if there's something different that you'll need this summer to make that happen, we should talk about that as well if your district's not providing it. I don't think you should have to give out your personal cell phone numbers. And your school might have rules about that. So just what's the mechanism that students will be able to communicate with you over the summer? Any questions about that? Okay. And then I just tossed in here the senior exit survey, kind of a different themed question. Again, we'll be going over that at the April workshops. We'll have the links for you like we have in the past. It will be electronic. You will get weekly reports telling you who has not completed the survey. So you will get regular communication so you can track that. But I really want you to start thinking now about how you're going to hit that 90% goal. Because we have to hit that goal. So last year, we gave it to you really late. We didn't give you enough time to plan. We did not come close to hitting our 90% target. So I just want to reiterate, like, this is not a negotiable item at this point. For our 7th year work to happen in the way we need it to, we have to get 90% participation on the senior exit survey. And so please start thinking about that now and planning for that. The window will be open from this April workshop through May 19th. So we're going to give you nearly a month to get it done. We hope that'll be sufficient time. We really can't go beyond that and hit our other deadlines for that, for getting that information out to you. So please start strategizing with your principal. I've heard from some schools that the school has their own senior survey that they do. That's fine, but you still have to do ours. So if you'll have the questions, we'll give you all the questions so you can see that, so that your school can see what's being asked. Your school's going to have the data. We'll give you all of the data. So if that's a concern, please start addressing that now.
Marcy, can I ask a question? Can I change the word from survey to questionnaire? Because if I have it a survey, I have to get parent permission to do that. So does it matter? Is it going to come and say survey on it? Just saying.
You can call it whatever you want to call it. I don't care.
Perfect. That's all I need.
Yeah, we're going to give you a link and a QR code. That's what you're going to get from us.
Perfect. That works great. Thank you.
All right.
Marcy, did you remember last year's question? I think the first question on there was, do you want to take the survey? Has that been,
we deleted
taken
that.
off of there?
We deleted it.
Thank you.
Everyone's gonna complete it. So yeah, we won't. Lesson learned. Yeah, and like I said, we'll be able to give you a roster of who has not completed the survey. So you'll be able to get that and follow up with those students.
Marcy, if we also corrected the piece where I think it was about asking for a phone number, but if they checked the wrong one, they couldn't go any farther than the survey.
We'll double check that. I don't remember that detail, Jerry, so thank you, but we'll double check that logic. Yeah. There will also be a question in there for them to sign up for the welcome day. So if a student says, I'm going to attend Grays Harbor College, they will then get a question that says, do you want to come to welcome day on June 13th? And they'll be able to say yes or no, or maybe. So we'll be registering them for the welcome days via the survey as well.
Questionnaire.
The questionnaire.
And we had a lot of success last year where the week before the questionnaire, I pulled in 2 students from every homeroom, kind of trained them on what they could do to help support students in doing that. And then I forget, last year we had them do 2 things. And if they brought their phone or Chromebook up and they showed the completion of the questionnaire, they received a treat, and then something else they received a different treat for. So we'll probably do something similar this year because except for the kids that were absent, everybody did it. Everybody wanted their sucker donut or whatever it was. And then this year, I think we're going to have to do something similar too, because we're just not getting as much. I need help collecting the colleges and the acceptances that you're asking for the portal. So we'll probably do some type of Google form that same day to try and collect some of those things. Because at this point, the only ones I've received have been when a rep has told me who has applied and been accepted.
Okay.
And so trying to kind of do them at the same time would be helpful.
Yeah, our college application entry in the portal is very low right now. And we really need you all to step up and get caught up on that, preferably before spring break. But right now, if we were to just use the portal for this data point, we would say only about 20% of our students are going on to college. So.
And I totally see that. I think the hard part is we just have so much going on right now that for me, it's like trying to go out and ask where people are going to school. It's great and engage in that conversation to figure out how to support them. But I feel like the number is going to be the same, whether I collect that in May versus if I collect it right now. And so to try and figure out how to collect that data from kids is the difficult part.
Yeah, I agree.
Marcy, I want to do a quick time check with you.
Yeah, we're
We have
good.
about, okay.
I think we've covered what we needed to cover on the questions. Thanks. Perfect timing, Bob.
Can I add one thing really quick to help? So when we
Yes.
did our survey last year, we know the only class that every student is required to do is English. So we just asked for one day of the English class to the first like 10, 15 minutes, and we just joined every single English class, and
Yeah.
students loved them. Students love dum-dums.
Yeah, that's what we did too, and over a 2-week period. And it almost has to be a voluntold kind of thing, not just do it as you want to.
Wow. Bellingham is holding graduation tickets hostage for the survey. That's incredible.
That's good.
All right. What's next, Beth?
I think you shared these, and Annie has more information that I think she's able to share out on those. And then I have.
Perfect.
Year
So,
7.
Just some really small reminders about the year 7 workshops. Kelly let me know that it looks like almost all the right people are registered. So hopefully that's true for you. If not, you can check in with her. She'll be following up with you. Thank you for getting that done and getting that done early. We're excited to try out this priority cohort combined event in Spokane and in Olympia. So we'll see how it goes. So as in the past, about a week prior to the workshop, I will send out your work plan template and budget amount for the year. So I don't have those ready yet, but you will get them prior to the workshop. Then I would recommend that you bring to the workshop your school calendar for next year if you have it, and any other planning tools that you might need. Then, as we have done the last couple of years, we will schedule June meetings with you and your administrator. So usually the coordinator and the administrator attend those, and we'll go through and review the work plan as submitted, renegotiate anything that needs renegotiated, and finalize those by the end of the month so we can get contracts out in July. So at the April workshop, Kelly will be working with each of you to set up those appointment times. We don't have a lot of flexibility in those, so we kind of have as many appointments available as we need. So it'll take some cooperation from all of you to make sure we get those all scheduled. And then one of the things that I noticed this time is the school teams that are coming are a little bit smaller than they've traditionally been. So you're all bringing fewer people just in general to the workshop, which tells me that maybe there's some work that you need to do prior to the workshop if you're needing input from others into the plan. So I just wanted to note that you know, if there's information you need from other people in the building to be able to start building that work plan, then just a little nudge to do that prior to, yeah, and it's not true across the board, but just in general, it's a little bit smaller groups. I think that was everything. Any questions about the April workshops?
Marcy, if we have a plan that we've used this year that has been really successful, separate from adding the additional 7th year support, our plan, I think, is just to continue to do those things because we've had success with them. And so I think maybe that could be things where people are feeling like they're going to repeat a plan again. So just that could be a reason why.
Yeah, we're also looking at revising the requirements for next year and doing a few prescriptive things. So it'll probably end up being some combination, Rosalie, depending on what was in your plan that you loved. Probably some things that you loved and worked really well, and then probably some things that we're going to say, and here's something you're going to absolutely, you know, a must do. So what we're trying to do is in some ways narrow our scope. We have been working with our evaluator and looking at where can we demonstrate we are the most effective and how can we spend more time on that kind of activity. So that's been really interesting, and we'll tell you all about that in April.
I had a quick question too. Are we not doing match again next year?
No match again next year. Oh, I know, no match. None of us will remember how to do match when we have to do it again. I'm a little afraid, but it's a nice break for all of us for sure. So yeah, no match required. Yeah. Rest in peace. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, please contact Congress about match because they're the ones in charge of that. All right. Well, I think that was everything I wanted to share. I hope that was helpful. It feels like, as Beth sometimes says, it feels a little bit like a fire hose of information, but we have a great handout coming your way that'll help remind you of all the things we just talked about. So thank you.
All right. Well, congratulations, everyone. You survived a double March webinar series. Thank you for being actively involved and having really great questions. And I'll be sending you the PowerPoint and the link to the video and the recording and all the good stuff. And if you have questions, just hit me up. And yeah, I'm giving you 10 minutes of your life back. Yay. See you next month.
Bye all. Have a great week.
Thank you.